I will tell you right off the bat, this is not going to be a class on how to do a CMA. If you tuned in to learn the cookbook method of doing a CMA, and that's what you think that we're going to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to let people know right off the bat, I'm not going to be talking about that. Okay? How to do a CMA. That really is a whole nother class. As a matter of fact, I think HAR teaches a class.
I do. Yeah.
Doing a CMA, and that's an important thing to know, but it's not going to be part of this class. Now I'm going to talk about some of the pitfalls of doing a CMA, some of the things that you know, some of the common mistakes that I've made with CMAs. But anyway, everybody just chime in here. What are you hoping to get out of the class, or what are concerns you have? Or Veer said she's had some challenges.
So this is Simi.
Oh, pardon. Go ahead.
This is Simi Gautam. Hi, Chris. How are you?
All right.
Okay. So I'm hoping to find out why the other houses are listed for the price they're listed for. You know, maybe I'll get some insight. You know, not necessarily what I should list the house for, but why they have listed it on that particular price. So
You're talking about competitive homes with your subject property
meaning,
that you're listing?
no, I'm not listing, but the property which are already listed. So why they chose that price to list it at, I'm thinking that I'll get something out of this class to know why that price people like how it is defined or how they come up with that list price. So
All right. Awesome.
One more thing,
Thank you.
Chris. You mentioned that you're going to speak about the clients, how they to talk to them about pricing. And what I'm seeing right now, a lot of sellers, because they're realizing, at least the ones that are following the market, they're realizing that there are less inventory in the market, and some of them, not all, are sticking with the idea that I have to stay high. And I try to convince them, it's not selling. We're not having showings. No, but wait.
What do you take? So you go to.
And for some reason, their mind is just locked.
Be where it is.
I tried all the scripts, but some of them are like, but I'm not selling this. And I get offers, and I show them offers for that. Their just mindset is.
Thank you, thank you.
And I tried all the scripts.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, but you know, sellers have their own mindset. They have their own idea. And who else?
Yeah, it'd be interesting just to learn more about your strategy, your ideas in terms of working with clients on the reduction side. In other words, how do you set your initial price, and how many days do you typically like to see before, hey, we need to reduce our price, and what kind of conversation do you have with them? You know, what do you like to say to them to help them move away from where they're at towards the market?
Is that Dean?
Yeah.
Hey, Dean. I can't see everybody.
That's all right.
I don't know how to do that, but I recognize you got a great voice for radio. You know, you got a great voice. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, and I'm gonna actually put your name next to where I'm talking about that to make sure that if I'm running out of time or something, I don't.
How long is this class?
I think it's going to be about 90 minutes.
Okay, good.
So, all right, who else?
Anything related to listing is good for me because I don't have many listings. I haven't had many listings. So anything, it's good for me. I learn from everyone.
Okay, well, we're gonna get after it and get into it, and you know, anybody who knows me, knows that I have a passion for helping real estate agents be better real estate agents. And what I mean by that is to learn and not make all the mistakes that I made in my 20-year career. One of the things that I have a hard time and I struggle with when people, you know, come to me for help, they say, how can I get more clients? You know, I'm not good at coaching and helping people with lead generation and getting more clients. My goodness, and that's one of the reasons probably why I stopped coaching Bold is because that's mostly what we talk about in Bold. And, I just didn't feel like I was doing a great job at that. But my feeling is the best way to build a real estate business and the best way to attract clients to your real estate business is to be a highly competent, highly professional realtor, a real estate sales and consulting professional. And, my passion and my goal is to help people be better at their profession. And so when Megan asked me, what are some other classes that, I've been teaching the contracts class now almost exclusively for about 4 or 5 years. And she said, well, what are some of the classes you used to teach? And I said, well, I used to teach two classes called What Do I List This For? And What Do I Offer for This Property? And they're really sister classes. They kind of go together. They're very similar. And she said, well, why don't you teach both of them? And so I'm doing the listing side today. And then next week, same time, same bat channel, 1 o'clock next Thursday, I'm going to be doing What Do I Offer for This Property? So, as I said, this is not going to be a nuts and bolts class. It's going to be more high level modeling, if you will. Things that we need to consider, not only about a specific property and a specific client, but just what is our lane as real estate agents. And I think I'm going to probably change, and Dawn, I'm really glad you're on the line, and other experienced agents. I haven't seen everybody, a beer, but I really want to hear from you. But I really think that maybe I'm going to give you a different way of looking at some things. Because a lot of the things I'm going to talk about here, I didn't really learn or know or understand until about year 15 in my career. So, I was late coming to the game, and I'll talk about exact specific things that I did that I had no business doing, and I thought I was doing the right thing. So I'm going to be working on getting a different perception or a different thought around a listing price. And part of that is because we need to help our sellers understand exactly what they're doing when they, in collaboration with us, determine a list price. And, you always begin a journey with the end in mind. And talking to a seller about what to list a home for is the beginning of a journey. It's the beginning of this journey that we call selling a home. And, if you have 5 different sellers all own the same exact home, all 5 of them have a different destination. They have a different motivation. They have different desires. They have different goals. And no 2 sellers are going to be the same. Again, it's a very, very personal thing, and it's their journey, right? It's not our journey that we're trying to take them on. It's their journey that we're assisting them in taking. So, and Karen's on the line. And Karen, so if you have questions or comments, go ahead and type them. Karen, I guess you'll see them.
We'll
Karen?
definitely monitor that and make sure you get the questions.
I saw something pop up at the bottom of my screen there. So I'm going to dive deep. If there are any high C's, talking about the disc, if there are high C personality types, you're going to be frothing at the mouth. You're going to want more and more. The high I's, they're going to be checking their watch, see when happy hour starts, and I might lose some of you. But and the high D's are, at the end of this class, the high D's are going to say, I could have said that in 10 minutes. Why did he take 90 minutes? No. And there's a lot of truth to that. But, when we're talking about a list price, let me ask you this question. Everybody, feel free to unmute yourself. I want to know who makes the first offer in a real estate transaction.
Seller. I always ask them first, after what we said, what do you think the house is worth?
Is that a beer?
Yes.
So a beer says the sellers make the first offer? I thought the buyer agent sits down with the buyers and they write out the offer.
Oh, you're
and they,
speaking about guessing the price. Oh, I thought about guessing the price for the house in the beginning. Oh, yeah, okay.
you know, I'm talking about who makes the first offer. No, wait a second, Abir, don't go away, okay? Because you might have accidentally said the right answer. You ever do that? Have you ever accidentally been right?
Never.
Well, I'm just going to go with what Abir said. You know, we think, and for 15 years, I'm like, oh, yes, the buyer makes the first offer on the property. You know, that's not true. A list price, an MLS listing, is the first offer in a real estate transaction. The seller is offering to sell their property for $395,000, and they'll throw in the refrigerator and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. He has an existing survey that you can use. And isn't that the first offer?
They're offering it out there for sale at that price. Yes, they are.
That's the first offer. And so here's the thing you should get from this is so if I am representing a buyer and I submit my buyer's offer and it's low, and the listing agent comes back and says, all right, Chris, you know, my seller was insulted by that offer. And what, you know, if I want to be really snarky, what I'm going to say to the listing agent is, and this is what I want you to get is, well, you know, Mr. Listing Agent, actually what we made was a counter offer. What do you mean a counter offer? No, you submitted an offer. I said, no, you guys made the first offer in the MLS. And now we're making a counter offer to your seller's offer to sell the home. And by the way, my buyer thought that your seller was a little bit high, and he never told me that he was insulted by that. Karen chuckled a little bit.
That has happened more than once.
You know, I mean, isn't that exactly the case, right? When we make an offer on a property, we're really, as a buyer's agent, we're making a counter offer to the listing. And usually, often, it's lower than the list price. It's a counter offer. It's a discussion. So, you know, that's a good starting point. It is for us to understand that the list price is the first order in the process. Now, I mean, the first offer in the process. Anybody have any comments about that?
I like that.
I really want this to be a discussion. So.
I think more people ought to know that or realize it for sure, because it would help tremendously.
And the reason why I'm pointing that out, thanks, Karen. And the reason why everything I'm saying are things that you can bring to your seller, that you can bring into that listing meeting when you're sitting down to talk about a list price. So Madeline put out a few bullet points about this class. And one of the things that was in the bullet points is something that we as real estate agents are not qualified to do. And we're not supposed to. And in training and in articles in the Texas Realtor magazine and the legal questions, this comes up very, very often. And that is that we are not qualified to tell people the value of their home. Yet that's what we think we do all day long. You know, call me for a free value of your home, or you want to know what your home is worth? Call me. I'll tell you what your home is worth. And the problem is it's a matter of semantics. But then we go through this process called a CMA, and then we hand this document. Here's what your home is worth. And then right at the bottom of the very document that we hand the person, it says this: This represents an estimated sales price for this property. It is not the same as an opinion of value developed by a licensed appraiser. That is at the, and it's required, by the way, that verbiage has to be on every single CMA that we give people, and it's there. HAR puts it there for us automatically. So, you know, I look back and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm really glad I never got sued. I don't know how many times, Dawn, I had friends that were getting divorced, you know, and one of them would call me and say, hey, got bad news, we're getting divorced. Don't worry, I'm happy. You know, don't feel bad for me or whatever. Hey, but I need to know what my house is worth. And, you know, I would at least say, okay, I'll do it and I'll do it. But I really feel like if I do this, I need to give it to both you and Mary, John. You know, John and Mary, I just feel like I have to give the same information to both people. So I'm not, you know, taking sides or anything. But then I would do this thing and I would say, so according to the data, your home is worth, and I'm like breaking my license. I'm doing something that's out of my lane. Now, I don't want you guys to be at a party this weekend and you're talking to somebody and they say, so,
Yeah, we're all going to a lot of parties these days.
well, just pretend, a virtual party. And someone says, so Chris, you know, what do you think my house is worth? I don't want you to say, well, I'm really not supposed to tell you. I was in a class on Thursday and the instructor said, never tell someone what their house. No, you know, an informal discussion, you know, we can tell people what, you know, we think of, you know, their house is worth, or, you know, what it would sell for. But in terms of a professional setting where we're giving something definitive in writing, that's not our lane. And that should be very freeing, I think, to us. That should really give us the freedom to do what we're licensed to do. And by the way, what appraisers stink at and what they're not licensed to do. What we're licensed to do and what we're qualified to do is discuss price. We are experts and we're licensed to help a seller determine what the best price is to list their home for them to maximize their return and at the same time reach their real estate goals. With buyers, we're licensed to, and our expertise is in, and this is what we'll talk about next week, it's helping them determine an offer price that helps them get the home for the best price possible and helps them also reach their real estate goals. And by the way, appraisers, they have no clue about that. Appraisers, you know, just think about it logistically. If there's an appraiser who lives in Pearland and does most of his work in Pearland, and he comes up to my neighborhood, Greenway Village right now, and does a market analysis, he's going to look at recent sales, but he's not going to understand that things are hotter than heck right now in this neighborhood. And he doesn't have a pulse, or she doesn't have a pulse on the market and can't gauge that. However, as real estate agents, not only can we gauge that, we have to gauge that, and we have to relay that information to our clients when we're talking about pricing. Now, is the list price, I wish I could see everybody's heads nodding or shaking or not up and down, but you know, is a list price gonna be the price that an appraiser is going to end up appraising that house for? Probably not. Is the offer price that the buyer first makes, is that going to be the value that an appraiser is going to put? No, completely different lanes, completely different discussions, right? So we have to stay in our lane and focus on how we do what we're supposed to do as well and as good as we can. By the way, appraisers can be almost arbitrary. And value is a very arbitrary thing. I had a listing once, and it was on the market, and we got a contract in early December. Sale price $375, and the appraiser came in at $325.
Hmm. Ouch.
$50,000, and it wasn't like $50,000 low on $1 million house. It was $50,000 low on the $375,000 house. So the deal busted out. We put it back on the market. Immediately got another offer in contract at $375. The appraiser went out about 3 weeks later, around December 20th, came back, made value, $375. So in 2 weeks, I called it the Christmas miracle. Thanks, Karen.
Yes, sir.
One person says 325, and another person looks at the same data and says 375. So, appraisers are all over the place, right? And so are real estate agents. And so who was the one that asked, they want to understand why other people have listed their homes for certain prices? It's not a clearly defined process, just like appraisals aren't a clearly defined process. It's a combination of the property and the seller's motivations. And so that's what we're going to focus on here as we talk about helping people determine the list price. So just in summary, value is the world of the appraiser, and our world deals with what?
Price.
The P word?
Price.
Price, right. First thing I want you to get. Now, I hope you're taking notes, okay? Because I don't have any handouts, or I've got a couple of visual aids, a couple of pictures to look at, but mostly it's going to be note taking. So let's talk about what we control and what we don't control. So a seller controls what they will not sell the home for, right? Every seller can control, I'm not going to sell the house for less than X. Every buyer controls what they won't pay for a home. I will not pay over Y for a particular home. But what we don't control, and what sellers and buyers don't have complete control over, is where in that space they're going to come together. And by the way, they might come together on a Thursday on a sales price. But wouldn't you agree that if they didn't come together on Thursday, that the price on Friday that they come together at would be different than the price on Thursday? And the reason would be, on Friday, that seller, well, here's a better example. They don't come together on a price on Friday. And Monday, they might get together on a price, and it might be a lot different than the price that they would have gotten together on Friday, because on Monday, the seller now had no showings all week. And so is the seller now on Monday, just 3 days later, maybe $5,000 more motivated to sell the home?
For sure.
Likewise, if on Monday, the guy had an open house and tons of people came, and the buyer was camped out in front all weekend watching, and they thought, oh my gosh, I need to go agree to his price. On Friday, she was going to be $5,000. She was trying to get it $5,000 better. And now she says, okay, call the guy. I'll take his offer, 5,000 more. Let's go. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just a different 48 hours later, and they're coming together at a different price. And so that's the part that's in the ether, that comes together kind of almost by default. So a buyer and a seller don't have control over where they're going to end up getting together. But let's take do our first visual aid here. So I want everyone to take their left hand. So left is for listing. Okay? Seller, that's how you can remember it, because we're going to be moving our hands around, and we got to remember that our left hand is the seller and our right hand is the buyer. So buy right. You might be from a place where they had buy right pharmacies, or buyer representation, buyer, right hand. Okay. So put your left hand for the seller down around your belly button. I assume everybody has a belly button. I once taught high school at Jersey Village High School, and I had a student that didn't have a belly button, and he proved it to everybody. This is claim to fame.
Oh my goodness.
I think even Jesus had a belly button. I mean,
That's funny.
it's
Wow.
something about the way the birth happened, and just there's nothing there. All right, left hand at your belly button. So the seller will accept any price for his home or her home from the belly button up to the ceiling. Okay? Now, let's take the right hand now and put the right hand on your forehead. Now, the right hand represents the buyer, and the buyer for this particular property will pay anything below this price up here. Now, look at the gap between what the seller will accept and what the buyer will pay.
Big.
So hopefully, and the seller's going to list at the belly button, okay? So hopefully there's at least one buyer in this gap. And I've already said there's one buyer, and that's this buyer up here. But hopefully in this gap, you might have 20 buyers, right? At various points in this gap. They'll pay various different maximum amounts for this particular property. Well, all of these people, let's say there are 20 of them, if they look at the MLS, if they look at the listing, should theoretically go and do what when the listing goes live?
Go see the house.
Go see the house, right? And so you're going to have 20 people go see the house, and they're going to probably go look at other homes, but hopefully at least one of those 20 people are going to make an offer in this gap. Now, let's take your left hand and start moving it up, okay? Now, what happens as you move your left hand up to the number of people in the gap?
Probably gets less.
It gets less. Karen, I love you. Keep doing that, okay? You're answering for the whole class, right? It gets less. There are fewer and fewer and fewer people. So as the seller determines that he wants or she wants to list the home higher and higher, what are they cutting out?
A lot of buyers.
A lot of buyers, right, that could compete to buy the home. Now, there is this one buyer right here. Okay, well, now you're down to one buyer, right? Now, what happens if that buyer suddenly found another house? Now they're gone.
Yeah.
Or what happens if you list up here? Now you've listed up here, and are there any buyers that would pay that much for this particular home?
Nope, probably not.
Now you have overshot all the buyers for the home, and you're going to be up the creek. And who was it? Who's asking about the discussion with their seller about overpricing? Dean, there's a good analogy or a good discussion
I'll do,
you
listen.
can have. So, all right, left hand, right hand. So let's talk about the definition of a list price. And this is something to write down. As a matter of fact, I will say, you know, I've said this definition in a listing meeting over 500 times, and it just kind of rolls off my tongue. And if you can remember this, and I've trained my team, you know, to remember this, if you can remember this definition, you halfway sound like you know what you're doing. Okay, and Fake it till you make it. What can I say? You know, as part of any business, right?
Right.
Hopefully, except for brain surgery. We don't want anybody faking it there. Right? But here's your definition of a list price. And I believe that this is my own definition, but I believe that it really helps us to understand what a list price is and what a list price isn't. So here's the definition. It's that price that gets the most people through the front door. As Karen said, you know, we want as many people to come through that door as possible. It's that price that gets the most people through the front door, leaving as little money on the table. There's one more part to it. While addressing the needs and motivations of the seller client. That price that gets the most people through the front door, leaving as little money on the table while addressing the needs and motivations of the seller client. Now, here's some homework for you folks that may be joining me next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Take this definition of a list price and use it as a guide and write a definition for an offer price. I'm going to get off the counter offer thing for buyers. That was for illustration purposes. We'll go back to the language that we're used to, the buyers making the offer on the house. So that price that gets most people through the front door. So let's say that there's a house that's 380-ish, okay? So if you list this 380-ish house for 340, what's going to happen? You can unmute yourself and join in the discussion. If you list this 380-ish house for 340, what's going to happen when you list it?
You should get more buyers. More
What?
takers. You get more takers, more buyers.
You can get a lot of buyers. You can get a lot of interest. You might even have an auction on the front lawn the first day, the house, figuratively speaking, that the house goes on the market. But if the house is truly a 380-ish house and you've listed it at 340, what are the chances of getting a sales price
More.
up to 380? You're going to go probably above 340, but are you going to get the 380?
No.
Probably not, right? So you've gotten tons of people through the door at that price, but you've left what? Money on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go to the other extreme. You got this 380-ish house, and now you're going to price it over another 100 break, and 100 breaks are important, and I'm going to get back to that. But let's say you go to 420. Well, now what's going to happen?
No showing.
Unmute yourself. What's going to happen at
Sell the
420?
houses that were for 380 first, because ours would be a good comparable that why we should not get that house.
And nobody's going to show it.
Abir, can you say that again? It sounded brilliant, but I didn't hear it.
We're gonna help sell the other houses because everybody's gonna put ours as a comparable, saying that's why we're not buying this house because the other is cheaper.
Okay, let's just pause right there, and I'm going to skip. Abir, I want you're going to teach that right now, okay? Because that's coming later. But I want you to nice and clearly state what a home's list price should do in the market. Just say what you just said, but everybody, stop doing email for a second. I understand everybody's doing email and text. That's fine. I do it too. But Abir, listen to Abir. Here you go. Go.
Basically, if I price it higher, it's going to be a good comparable for everybody, for every house around me to sell quicker because I'm the highest. So everybody would find a reason of why I shouldn't buy this house and buy the other because it's cheaper.
So you're going to make everybody else's house look like a steal of a deal.
Yes, like a deal. I'm making everybody look like they are a catch.
Now, should the goal of a list price be that all the competing homes make your home look like a good deal? Dean? There's another script for you, buddy. You know, right now, Mr. Seller, where you're priced, you're making every other home look like the sale of the century. You know, listen, if you went to a doctor and you had a disease, you'd want him to tell you the truth, right? Well, you know, I'm the doctor when it comes to real estate, and I want to do what's best for you, so I've got to tell you the truth. Your home is making every other home in this neighborhood look like a great deal. Thank you, Abir.
That's
Awesome.
great. Thanks.
Yeah. So you're not getting any traffic. No one's going to come to the 420 list house, but you haven't left any money on the table, right? You're going to get all of that 380 probably if someone ever makes an offer. So the goal of us, our goal, is to help a seller determine for themselves what that list price is between 340 and 420. That will get the most people through the front door, leaving as little money on the table as possible. And by the way, if I have a number in my mind that I'd like to see the person list at, like 380, what am I going to do when I talk about those two numbers? I'm going to do 340, 420, because here's 380, right?
Narrow it down.
So I'm kind of, this is sort of, you know, planting in their mind what I think is a good price.
Does that normally help? Because some people are still stuck with the idea that even if you kind of move the conversation towards that, they still don't get it. I had 2 of those recently.
They don't get what?
They don't, when you put kind of a margin between where they should fall, they are totally oblivious. I mean, they want to stick still to the high.
I know, and we're going to, listen, I've had my share of overpriced listings. And why don't we just pause for a second and just talk about that, because I think that is part of the class. I mean, you know, we're determining a list price. What if a seller just absolutely says, nope, forget it, this is my price, we're listing it at this, oh, I'm not going to work with you, or I'm not going to sell it. And you get these trainers every once in a while who say, I will never take an overpriced listing.
Right. Yeah. And I don't, I mean, you know,
And
I guess.
I built my business on overpriced
Right.
listings.
Yeah. I don't get that. I mean, there have been times when I've been, you know, very honest, and again, there's that other agent that's willing to take it when it's a lot higher. So, and I just, you know, I'm just always going to tell the truth. So.
Right. Now, let me make this clear, and I'm glad you just said that, Dawn, because I realize my comment could be misunderstood. I will never give someone, oh, yeah, let's list it up here to get the listing, right?
Oh, no, I know.
So, yeah, so don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about where a seller has dug his or her feet into the sand and said, no, we're going to list it here. The fact of the matter is, I've made more money off of leads and future business. I don't want to, listen, I'm going to preserve any relationship I can. And when I take an overpriced listing, I still have a relationship with these sellers, and they still have friends and relatives. And if I can demonstrate my competence and help them and help work through it, they're going to be referring me to other people. Plus, I'm going to get leads and other business from that listing. So personal preference, you know, I'm not a transactional agent. I've been building a business for 20 years. And I would say that the people who say, I'm never going to take an overpriced listing, I would say they tend to be transactional agents who look at their business just one transaction at a time. Instead of viewing their business as a business, you know, it's like a restaurant owner doesn't just view every order. Okay, let's make this order really good because I have to get the money at the end of this meal from this person. No, he's looking at all the business and all the meals that he's selling as part of his revenue. Not a very good analogy, but anyway.
Question.
Yes.
I bet you have a strategy for the people who have overpriced.
Yeah, so let's continue the discussion, and let's, You mean for doing price reductions?
Yes.
Yeah. So specifically, talking to a seller about reducing their price is almost a whole nother class. And I want to really kind of continue to, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I want to focus on what people came here for, which is this discussion about determining a list price. And maybe some of the things that I'm going to say in the rest of our discussion will give you some ideas or scripts about how to go about asking, for a reduction. So this is an extremely critical point. So if you're in the middle of doing other things right now, really focus on what I'm about to say next. And this was, I got to I got to give Fred Wright the credit, I'm trying to say that, for drilling this into my head. Fred Wright was my first team leader before Terry, who was before Michelle. And Fred always said, listen, when you sit down with a seller, you need to have a range of possible list prices in mind. And that was an amazing insight for me because, we think that we're supposed to come with the recommendation, one number, and this is what it should be. No, because that number might not work for that particular person. They might want to do 10,000 less than that number. Their money might not be the most important thing to that particular seller. And also, you've determined that number usually before you've even sat down and talked to them, maybe before you've actually come to see the house. Which of course is going to be a big determining factor as well. So the most important thing that I want to get across today is that you are going to come to the seller with a range of list price. Now you might not tell them what that range is. In your mind, you're going to have this range. And then it's through your discussion with the seller, through your personal view of the home, through understanding what the seller is or is not willing to do to get the home ready to put on the market, from determining the needs and motivations of that particular seller, you're going to be moving up and down that range. And so I do have a little, anybody know what that is? Dawn, do you know what that is? Does John have one of these?
A slide ruler. Slide ruler.
Yeah, it's a slide rule, right?
That's back in the pre-calculator days, Chris.
What?
That's back from the pre-calculator days. You're kind of dating yourself, right?
Next sentence out of my mouth, Dean. This is what we had to use before calculators to do calculations. And the state of Texas, I don't know, Karen, are you old enough to remember this? The state of Texas actually had a state championship in high school.
For slide rule, you bet.
Slide rule. It was actually a competition, like debate or number sense. It was a slide rule competition. Now, I grew up in New York, and in my junior year of high school, calculators were invented. So I never really learned how to use this. But I do have one, and this is actually a pretty nice one. It's ivory. And it was given to me by a dear friend, and I've kept it. But I'm going to use it because, and I was trying to find something on Amazon to use that might have been better. But what we have is a range of list prices, okay, possible list prices. And there are going to be many, many, many things that are going to cause the slide to move up. Let's see which way. We'll make this higher, move up to the higher end or down to the lower end. And so for the rest of our discussion, I'm going to be talking about the things that make the slide move and how you enter into a conversation with your client about that. Now, let me just say that, and this is good for the high Ds. okay? We're going to talk about a lot of analysis, a lot of things to look at, a lot of data to gather, a lot of things to consider. But this morning I had a conversation with a seller and I said, so what's your husband, you know, she said, and this isn't sexist, she said, well, you know, it's going to be my husband's decision on what we list the home. I said, all right, what's your husband want to list the home for? She said, well, he's thinking 329. I said, that sounds good. That's it. No deep dive, no big, and I mean, I looked at the numbers. I looked at the numbers for the neighborhood, and that's a good price. So I mean, you know, so don't feel like you have to have this, you know, marathon discussion with every seller you have. We came to an agreement in about 30 seconds as to what we're going to list this home for. So how are we going to develop this range? So I'm going to start to move a little bit quicker here to get through all of this. But the goal is to develop a range of reasonable list prices. So I would say the first thing you should try to do is to get a quick walkthrough, if possible, of the home. And when I mean quick, I mean 5 minutes. And you know, tell the person, look, you don't have to clean your house. You don't have to clean out the closets. If it makes you feel better, I'll send you a picture of my house so that you don't feel like weird about the way your house looks. Karen, please laugh. Did you mute? You muted yourself. You can't mute yourself. I need you to laugh at the group. So, yeah, I'll send you a picture of my house, you know. Do whatever you can. Just, I promise it's going to be 5 minutes. I just want, now what do I want to do? I want to go there and see if it smells like cigarette smoke. Right? You know, I want to go there and see if it smells like dog, whatever. I want to just see the general condition of the home, the flooring, any updates that they might have done. I want to see if the home has an outdoor kitchen, a covered back patio. I want to see if there's anything about the home that would be a negative that can't be changed about the home. I want to look at a lot of factors, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of those factors in a second. But try to get a quick walkthrough of the home. Now, while you're doing a quick walkthrough of that home, go ahead and make appointments to preview 2, 3, 4 other homes in the neighborhood that could be in competition with the home you're about to list. And tell the scheduler, tell CSS, make sure, or showing time, make sure they know that you're doing a preview. As a matter of fact, the seller doesn't have to leave. As a matter of fact, now we can't go in there and start talking to them about listing their home, but they're going to see a real estate agent coming in, previewing the home, taking notes, looking like they know what they're doing, and they're going to get your card, and who knows, maybe down the road, you might get a call. That has happened to me, by the way. But look at the competition, see how the competition is going to stack up. So that's another good thing to do. Again, we're gathering data, we're gathering information, trying to develop this range. Then you do a CMA. And again, this class is not about how to do a CMA. But I will tell you that I do, if I really need to research deeply, I actually do 3 CMAs. Or I look at 3 sets of data. So go ahead and write these down. Because if you're in competition for a listing and you go in on a listing appointment and you say to the listing agent now, and hopefully you're like the 3rd person in. I mean, you say to the seller, by the way, did the other agents that were here leave you with their market analysis? Now, do you realize that there's a lot of training out there that tell you to never leave your market analysis with the seller? And so very often I go into a listing and they say, no, you know, they wouldn't leave it with me. They showed it to me. And I said, well, you know, I believe that the seller needs all the tools at their disposal. This is just me personally, okay? to make an informed decision. So I'm going to leave my data with you for you to look over if we don't sign an agreement today, which is of course what I would love to do. But by the way, I look at it from 3 different perspectives. I like to, here's a good word, right? I like to triangulate in looking at a possible list price for your home. So here are the 3 CMAs I do before I go over there. I do the classic CMA, actives, pendings, solds in the last 6 months. I'll go back a year if the market's been pretty flat for a year and if there's not enough data in the 6 months. And that's usually what people do, and that's usually where people stop. But I think there's 2 more things to do. Another one you should do is look at what someone has to spend to be able to get the features and benefits of this particular property. Now, when I say features and benefits, I'm talking about more than just if the house, you know, if the subject property is a 3-car garage. Okay, let's look at what you have to spend to get a 3-car garage in this general area, what you have to spend to get on a cul-de-sac or a pool, or, you know, look at some of the main criteria that people look for, but also look at the schools that the house is zoned to. What does someone have to pay to get a home this size, a 2-story home this size, zoned to Cinco Ranch High School? Because you look at those things. Because a buyer, sometimes what's important to them are schools, and they almost sometimes don't care about other things. They just want to know, well, how can I, and this is what makes you know, Memorial Parkway, I think, such an incredibly valuable neighborhood, is that you can go to Taylor High School, you know, and live in Memorial Parkway. And I love Taylor High School. I think it's one of the best high schools in Katy. You could argue it's the best high school in Katy. But you can go there and not have to spend a lot of money. So, you know, I want to look at what has to be spent to get a home like this. All right, so that's another set that I bring. The third one that I bring is what else. So now I'm narrowing down the sales price. Let's say I'm thinking it's 380-ish. Well, now I want to know what else is available in the area that a price-conscious buyer will want to look at. They might tell their realtor, look, you know, I really don't care about stuff. I want to get the most value for what I'm willing to spend. And I'm looking anywhere from $350 to $400. So I really am looking, I don't really care about the specifics. I just want a good value. So then I'm going to also bring a list of the homes that are between $350 and $400. So I'm going to, and see how their home at various prices, getting back to what Abir said, you know, what is their home going to look like compared to these other homes at $390? What's their home going to look like compared to these other homes at $360? You know, at $390, it might look overpriced compared to these other homes. So again, these are 3 data sets that I'm going to use to try to, in my journey to getting a range of possible list prices.
Chris, I have a question.
Good, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying the school part and everything, that the second CMA, I get it. But the third one, you know, Katie, let's say Katie, because that's where we're working right now. I cannot put a compatible if I'm gonna use what's available for the buyers within the price range of the house I'm trying to list. Because if I'm comparing, let's say, Cinco, specific part of Cinco to something else, the prices per square feet can, I mean, a house that is 3,000 square feet can cost absolutely different from a neighborhood just around the corner. So,
Okay.
yes.
So if Holly Evans is on the line, she probably thought to herself, okay, here he goes, because you just mentioned 4 words that make me crazy. Price per square foot. And I'm going to talk about price per square foot, but price per square foot is it's a useful number, but it's the most misunderstood number that we have. And the consumer puts so much emphasis on price per square foot because the consumers don't have the knowledge we have. And Madeline puts these up on YouTube, so I'm not going to say I said something disparaging about our clients in a joking way, and in the last class I taught, and I went back and watched it on YouTube, and I thought, oh my gosh, I just called buyers and sellers children.
Whoops.
And I almost asked Madeline to see if she could cut that part out, but you know, really, consumers just have this obsession with price per square foot, and now, but so I'm just gonna, what?
I am one of them.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna really quickly, because I'm gonna get into that in a second, and I want to make sure I get through everything. But you just mentioned the house around the corner. So going from one section of Cinco to another, how are the sections developed in neighborhoods like Cinco Ranch, for example? Well, they're developed by lot size, right? So the home you're looking at might be on a 55 lot section. And then 3 blocks away, you're over in section 8, which is an 80-foot section.
Exactly.
So you're going to have the same size house, but which one's going to have the higher price per square foot? The one that's on the bigger lot, right?
Yes.
Now, is the lot size have anything to do with the size of the house? No.
No.
But does the lot size have everything to do with the value of the entire real estate?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the same size home on a larger lot is going to have a higher price per square foot. So is a home with a 3-car garage, or a home on a cul-de-sac, or a home with an outdoor kitchen, or a home with a big covered patio, or a home with a swimming pool. All of these things have nothing to do with the size of the home, and they greatly impact the price per square foot. The other thing that has everything to do with price per square foot, and Carolyn Bauerschlag and I have had so many funny conversations about this, and that's the size of the home. So if you have 2 exact homes, exact same amenities, same updates, same upgrades, everything, and one home is 2,000 square feet and one home is 3,000 square feet, the 2,000 square foot home is going to have a much higher price per square foot than, than the house next door that's a 3,000 square foot home. Because price per square foot, I'm going to throw a big phrase and I'm going to go slowly, has an inverse relationship to the size of the home. The larger the home, there's downward pressure on price per square foot. The smaller the home, there's upward pressure on price per square foot. There's a neighborhood north of I-10. Nothing wrong with north of I-10. All the homes, these homes have 1-car garages. They were all built in the 80s. And their homes are priced at $135 per square foot. Why? They're only 800 square feet.
It's tiny.
They're tiny. And so people are like, how the heck? 130 dollars per square foot in that neighborhood? That's ridiculous. Well, the home's only 800 square feet. It's only 850 square feet. It's 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen, and a bathroom.
And that's where we tell our clients you don't want to have the biggest house in the neighborhood, because you're going to end up pricing towards the average size of the neighborhood, not that you're bigger, so you're going to price at the same price per square feet per se as the small.
Exactly. So I'm glad this is being recorded, because I just went out of order. I took Abir's question and I went into my rant about price per square foot. It's an extremely misleading, now we can use it to our advantage all the time, right? And I do. But in reality, it's a very misunderstood metric, and it's way, way overused. Also, in general, a 3,000 square foot 1-story home is going to have a higher price than a 3,000 square foot 2-story home. If you've ever felt that, noted that, you are correct, because it costs more to build a 3,000 square foot one-story home than it costs to build a 3,000 square foot two-story home. So from day one, the one-story home costs more than the two-story home. So the price per square foot for one-story homes tend to be higher than the price per square foot for two-story homes. So when you do a CMA, getting back to the CMA, it's important to understand and compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges. You want to look at homes that are basically the same size on the same lot. And that's a big one, especially if you're not familiar with the neighborhood. Price per square foot, if you're going to use that, if you're going to look at that, and I do use it, but I got to make sure the homes that I'm comparing the subject property to are similar. Let's just run through a few other. Here's some numbers you should know. Now, these numbers are not accurate reflections at all of the value of a home or a list price, but you should know these numbers. They might confirm the range that you're driving at, but the reason you should know these numbers is because other people are going to know these numbers. The seller is going to go to Zillow and look up the what?
Zestimate.
A
The Zestimate, right. So you should know what the Zestimate is. Just to have that piece of information, because the seller is probably going to have it, and also consumers are going to look at that. What kills me is Zillow, you know, they have a for sale by owner platform. Have you ever looked at a for sale by owner on Zillow?
Yes.
They have the price up here, and right underneath it, they have the Zestimate. You know, so you got the for sale by owner price of $450, and then underneath it says Zestimate, you know, $395. So just crazy people. HAR has a Zestimate. It's the core logic number, or the real AVM. Is everybody familiar with that? So if you click on, you know, on HAR, if you click on tax, right, it comes up on the screen right away. You don't have to scroll up or down. I love it. You click on tax, and there's going to be a low, a high, and a medium range of some kind of aggregate. And I don't find it to be tremendously accurate. I usually find it to be too high. But that's a number. That's a number. You know, if your seller does overprice the home, and you know, against your wishes, and you list it, but it's in the range of that core logic number on HAR, and a buyer agent says, "Hey, where the heck did you get this list price?" I said, "Well, it's right there in
Where do you
HAR."
find it, Chris?
What?
Where do you find it again?
If you go to tax, if you click on tax, not the tax number in the MLS, but on the top, on the banner, there's tax, listing, I
Yes.
think there's other things across the top. Click on that tax thing, and you'll see it. It's called the real AVM. Okay.
Oh.
Another number, the tax appraised value. Okay. Again, typically tax appraised value, the HCAT, the Fort Bend CAT, or the Harris County Appraisal District number, those numbers are typically going to be lower than the market value. But it's important for you to know what that number is. Here's another number. Getting back to a consumer's obsession with price per square foot. You want to find the highest square footage number that you can authenticate. So there's 4 sources in MLS of square footage. You can source the taxing authority, and that's the one that's usually used. It says per appraisal district, 2,992 feet per appraisal district. You can source an appraisal. Now, an appraisal is probably considered the most authoritative, in my opinion, because it's actually somebody with a license to do this who went out and measured the home. Now, if you get 10 appraisers to go measure a home, how many different numbers are you going to get?
10.
10.
Really?
Yeah, it's an exact number done by inexact people. and inexact instruments, and people in various degrees of being in a hurry. And so you're going to get, I mean, I've refinanced my home, and I've got like 3 different appraisals, and they all have different numbers. But which one am I going to use when I go to sell my home?
The biggest.
The biggest, right? And I can use that. I can source an appraisal. I can have the appraisal sketch, and I can show that. So ask your sellers, do you have an appraisal? And they're going to say, oh, it was a long time ago, and the number is all different. I said, I don't care about the value that the appraiser made. I want to see the measurement that the appraiser did. Now, 2 other sources are the builder, and sometimes that's useful, but not necessarily the best, because builders tend to be conservative with their appraisal, with their square footage numbers, because they don't want to get sued, okay? And then the 4th number is you can source is whatever the seller says, and of course that's the most dubious number. People put a lot of less stock in that. But I will even, in some situations, pay an appraiser to go out and do a measurement of a home if I feel like it's going to benefit me from a business standpoint. But usually I can get the seller to do that. I can say, look, it's going to cost you $150 to get my friend Kim Campbell to go out, measure your home at $120 per square foot. All you got to do is get 2 more square feet than what's in the tax record, and you've made money. So you want to get the highest square footage number possible. So I hope you're writing these down. The last number to gather is months of inventory. And I'm not going to go into how to calculate this for yourself, but you don't have to calculate it. You can go into market data on HAR and put in your neighborhood or your area, your price range, new construction or not new construction, and HAR will spit out a months of inventory number. Now, I like to do my own, and I like to base it on sales in the last 6 months, the number of sales in the last 6 months. If someone wants to learn how to do a months of inventory calculation, I'll be happy to go over that with you privately. But you look at how many homes have sold in the last 6 months, divide by 6, that's how many homes sell per month. Look at how many homes are active. How many months would it take on that rate per month for the active homes to be depleted? If it's 3 or less, that's an indication that we have a market that favors the seller. If it's 3 to 6, 3 to 5, I would say, and this is my own interpretation, okay? I could get into a debate with lots of people about this. But if it's 3 to 5, I would say, even though it still technically favors a seller, it doesn't feel like it to a seller. You know, a seller is going to feel like, why isn't my house selling quickly? And it's not in a 3 to 5. It's going to take maybe a month. The 4th, and above 5, I would say that's a market that in general favors a buyer. And so look at your months of inventory. That's going to move the slide as you develop this range. It's going to move it up and down. So those are the numbers. Now, Karen has another data set that I think is really fascinating. And she's going to talk about it right now. You know, about 2 minutes, Karen?
That'll work. Yes, that's
Good.
plenty. Okay, guys, some of you might have been on the class that Jennifer Key did yesterday about showing time. And just an idea for you. Showing time has reports. When you log into showing time, and let me log in real quick. On the left-hand side, you have home and then messages scrolling down, and reports is on the bottom. You have a bunch of reports, and all of them are very unique and very different and can be used by you. But on the far bottom, it's Target Market Analysis is the name of the report. In there, you can do parameters as far as the price range of the houses. Now, these are houses that are in showing time for setting appointments. So that's the houses that they've got. So you set a price range, say 300 to 350. You click those, put them in there. Then you set an increment of price change. So I want, let's say you can do 5,000, 10,000, 25. I would recommend 5. This automatically defaults to 1 month, the last month. What are happening to houses between, say, 300 and 350, our price range. Now put in a city or a zip code. You can put in a subdivision. You can put in a school district. I'm just going to put Katy. Click on Katy when it shows up. Then the next thing you have to put in is, and really tell you the truth, that ought to be plenty. It's kind of like when you're searching houses, sometimes less is more. So price range, increment of 5,000, city of Katy. I'm going to hit submit and find out in the last month, what are the houses from 300 to 350 price range. Then it's going to show me in showing time how many showings have been for each price section. Again, we're talking about how do I price a house? I just did 300 to 350 the last month, showing time appointments. The price range that showed over 260 showings in showing time last month was priced between 325 and 330. The price house that showed the least amount of times was 340 to 344,999. Why is that important? Well, what if somebody just loves their dogs? Yeah, I wanted 332. Well, you're not going to get as many showings as if it were priced elsewhere. Look at this. It's really fun to look at. So 325 to 330, under 330, 260 showings in 1 month. The next highest was 315 to 320, right? 319,999. And that one got 170. So I thought it was just interesting when you're thinking about pricing.
So, and again, that's awesome, Karen. Thanks. So if, and I'm not sure I'm going to get her numbers right, but let's say there's a lot of showings between 325 and 330 and not as many between 330 and 335. So if your seller,
there's like 1/3 the amount, yes.
So if your seller is, you know, we're discussing where in this range, and you point out, well, look, if we just get just below 330, according to showing time statistics, there's a lot more buyers out there right now looking at
For that
point.
Price range, yes.
Thanks, Karen. That's awesome. Let's hold all the questions until I get through this so that people that need to leave at 2:30 can, but I'm going to go a little longer. I'm sorry, yeah, 2:30, because I'm not going to quite get through everything. Now, I talked about schools a second ago, and this is very important. And it's important that, especially if you're unfamiliar with the neighborhood. And I'm assuming that we're doing this process for a neighborhood that we're not familiar with. It's real important that you look at schools. Now, not only individual schools within a district, but different school districts. And I'm going to give you an incredible example. There is a neighborhood in the Memorial area between Derry Ashford and Highway 6. There's several neighborhoods in there, but there's one neighborhood called Thorn Branch. And Thorn Branch is split right down the middle. Half of the district is in the Spring Branch Independent School District, goes to Stratford High School. The other half of Thorn Branch is zoned to a vastly inferior school district, one that you just would never want your child to go to. Anybody want to guess what school district that is?
We're scared to say it.
HISD.
ISD. I mean, you know, the world has a pecking order, okay? And, you know, the folks in Memorial, I don't want to do anything that's going to make me get.
You're going to get in trouble.
I used to live with my daughter lives in Memorial now. My daughter had a house in Thorn Branch, right? in the Spring Branch section of Thorn Branch. So the folks that are zoned to Spring Branch ISD, they're just a little bit like this when it comes to Katy ISD. Now, before you start saying, oh, that's ridiculous. Well, I would venture to say we all know people at Katy ISD that kind of, you know, feel a little funny about other school districts nearby, right? So it's important to know that, and that all of that has an effect on real estate values. So in Thorn Branch, for example, you can't comp the homes in Katy ISD. By the way, the ones in Katy ISD also happen to have flooded in Thorn Branch. You can't comp those with the homes that are in Katy in Spring Branch ISD. The numbers are just like this. They're completely different. So, and you wouldn't know that, and an appraiser wouldn't know that. And as a matter of fact, the reason why this is significant is my daughter just sold her house, and the appraiser, only comps he had were the ones, and she's in Spring Branch, were the ones in Katy ISD. And we protested, and we got the appraisal up because the appraiser wasn't aware of that. Now, out here in Katy, let's look at, and again, I always tell people every school in Katy ISD is the American dream for somebody. Wouldn't you agree, Karen?
Oh, yes, for sure.
I mean, every single school in Katy ISD is the American dream for somebody. So I'm not saying, and I personally, I just said something that probably a lot of people would argue with me about. I just said I think Taylor High School, I could argue it's the best high school in Katy personally. But you know, a lot of people would take me to task on that. But there's two neighborhoods, Green Trails and Nottingham Country. And half of Green Trails is zoned to Pattison McMeans, and half of Nottingham Country is zoned to Pattison McMeans, Pattison Elementary, McMeans Junior High, and the other half is zoned to Nottingham Country and Memorial Parkway. And for whatever reason, there's a disparity between the prices of the homes that are zoned to Pattison McMeans and zoned to Nottingham Country Memorial Parkway. And so it's important to look at the different school zonings when you're doing your CMA, because you could really make a big error either way by not paying attention to that. Now that brings me to the next thing. So what are the three most important things in real estate? It's the old trick question. Karen, what are the three most important things in real estate?
Location, location, location.
Location, location, location. And if you're not a believer in that, take my word for it. Take it on faith. It is. Those are the three most important things. And the reason is that people will choose, if they have to go up in price, if they decide to go up in price, more often than not, they will choose the better neighborhood and pay a little more to get into the better neighborhood. Every neighborhood has a ceiling and a floor. And those are also the two numbers. The first thing I do, Osneda comes and we do CMAs all the time. And the first thing I say to Osneda is, what, Osneda? I say, okay, let's look at the most a house has ever sold in this neighborhood and the least a house in the last, maybe don't go forever, but that wouldn't make any sense. But in the last year and a half, what's the most a home is sold for in this neighborhood and what's the least? Because every neighborhood has a ceiling and a floor. The crappiest, most disrepair, unupdated home is at least going to get X in a neighborhood. Why? Because someone who's looking at a, quote, lesser desirable neighborhood, if they can spend a little bit more, they'll buy the crappy house to get into the more desirable neighborhood. And every neighborhood has a ceiling. So no matter how updated or tricked out or how expensive the swimming pool and the outdoor kitchen and the covered patio are, you're still not going to be able to get above the ceiling for that neighborhood. That's what we talk about when we say a home is over improved for the neighborhood. Because a buyer is going to say, yeah, that's a great house and I can consider it. Yeah, but man, I could go, for that price, I could go to this neighborhood and really impress my friends. So location is very, very important. And it's important to understand that the best, the highest, and the lowest sale price. That's going to be a good argument, Dean, against someone who wants to overprice their home and maybe price it above. But listen, you know, if we price it up there, first of all, it's no home has ever sold for that, Mr. Seller, in this neighborhood. So, well, I heard the person down the street sold it, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, usually by the time it's gone from the neighbor to the neighbor to the mother to the daughter and gets to you, the price has increased 40,000 over what was paid. Well, here's the real number. And you know, that's one way to kind of talk somebody off the cliff of overpricing the home. So you want to look at the location, both the micro location and the macro location, the larger area. Now, let's talk about other things that move the slide. Again, I'm going kind of quick here. Take notes. These are the 4 types of property conditions, okay? Down here at the low end, okay? Not move-in ready, not updated. Not move-in ready, not updated. So my definition of move-in ready. Move-in ready, to me, it's, by the way, this is what people are looking for. People are looking for either a move-in ready home or a fixer-upper. I don't think there's really any in between. And the only way you can deal with the gap between those two is with price, right? There's 3 things: location, price, and condition. Can't change the location. If you're not going to do anything about the condition, the only thing that's left is what?
Price.
Price, right. So move-in ready means that a person could move into the home and live in it and not have to do any immediate projects. Now, I'm not talking updating, okay? There are people that really don't care about an updated home in the latest and greatest. Yeah, they don't want ancient stuff. But what they don't want is a project. They don't want to have to replace the carpet right away, or have to, you know, patch holes in the wall, or, you know, do other things that they wouldn't want to invite their mother-in-law over to the house before they do. And believe it or not, people buy homes to impress their mother-in-law. As wild as that might seem. So my definition of move-in ready is someone could move in and start living in the house, and then as time goes on and as they desire to update or change cosmetic things about the house. But a move-in ready home is a home without any projects that have to be done. Updated, now there's different levels of updating. And of course, the more updated a home is, the more you're going to move the slide, right? So down here at the bottom, not move-in ready, not updated. Okay. Then I'm not really even sure which is better, which is more. You have updated, but not move-in ready. Now I'm sure all of us have seen, you know, homes that are really nicely updated that have a lot of updates, but the carpet needs to be replaced, or the house smells. It's not move-in ready if it smells really bad, right? It might have a lot of updates, but it might have 6 double pane windows right across the backyard that have all lost their seal. That represents a project that the buyer is going to have to do. So So that's an updated home, but I wouldn't consider it move-in ready. But you can change the things that aren't move-in ready about it. Then you have move-in ready homes that aren't updated. And I sold one recently. It was an original state, except they had done maintenance on AC. They changed the AC, they changed the roof. It didn't have the original 30-year-old roof or 30-year-old AC. But cosmetically, it was exactly the way it was in 1995 when it was built. It sold in one weekend, and it sold for a good price. But it could not, it would have sold for a lot more if it was updated. So that moves it up and down. And then up here at the top, you've got updated and move-in ready. So when you do that walkthrough, okay, that is going to help you determine what, which way to move the slide. Now, when you sit down with a seller, if the condition is here, but the seller is willing to spend some money and take care of some of those projects, that would move the slide which way?
Higher.
Up, right? Okay. All right, next thing is perceived external negatives. Go ahead and write that down. That's my own made up term. Perceived external negatives. Now I've got to share the screen here. I got a picture here I want to show you. Oh, that's not the picture I wanted to show you. That's my 3-week-old grandson. Hold on.
Yes, it is, Chris. Yes, it
I
is.
wanted to show you. Okay.
So cute.
Here's the picture I wanted to show you. Okay. This is an actual MLS.
Hang on, we still got Jack.
We still got the cute baby.
Oh,
Accidentally on purpose.
yeah. Well, I don't have the baby up here anymore. I got a picture of a house. Let me see. Let me stop share. Share the screen, and let me pull up this one. Now?
Yes,
Now?
yes, it's
You
correct.
see a house?
Yes.
What's growing out of the roof of that house?
Power
Power lines.
Power line.
This is an actual MLS listing. All right, that's an example of a perceived external negative. Now, the person who lives in that home probably is not bothered by that on a daily basis. Else they wouldn't have bought the home. So it's a perception on the part of a buyer that that's a negative. It's external, meaning it can't be changed. So you need to look out. I want everybody to unmute themselves, and I want you to mention what other negatives are that can't be changed that would impact this slide. Go ahead, unmute yourself. What are some other things? Class participation time.
Can or can't?
Backs up to commercial.
What?
Backs up to commercial.
Backs up to commercial or backs up to unknown land, right?
Or to a busy road or something like that.
To a busy road. Is that Montgomery?
Yes.
It is. Woohoo!
Class? You should be teaching this class. Yeah.
5G tower.
Backs up to a busy street. Who said water tower?
I did. 5G tower.
I once listed a house you can reach across the back fence and touch the water tower. What
Power
else?
line,
Power lines like we just saw.
power pole, like in the very back of the yard.
Yard. Out here in Katy, for whatever reason, people don't like telephone poles in their backyard. Now, in other parts of Houston, it's like common, it's normal, and it doesn't freak people out. But so all of these things are perceived external negatives. Now, here's the problem with a perceived external negative. Pricing becomes extremely important. Now, and Dean, this is something I wrote down your name next to this. So here's a discussion you can have with your sellers right from the get-go. So definitely a perceived external negative is going to move the slide down. All you can hope is that when they bought the house, because of that same negative, they got a good deal on the house.
Yes.
And you might even ask them that, listen, hey, listen, I would buy this house at a particular price. Now, did you get a good deal on this? Oh yeah, the builder, he just sold this dirt cheap to me, and he knew this was going to be an issue. I said, well, super. Well, now you have to realize that, you know, when you bought it there, you're going to have to sell it here, and you're going to not sell it up here. Let me tell you the danger, Mr. Seller, of overpricing a home with a perceived external negative. This is real important. If you have to leave, I would say just stay for the next 2 minutes and then leave, because I'm getting through the meat of it. But what happens with a perceived external negative? Now, what's the first question every buyer asks when they are considering a home? It's the first question, bar none. How
long has it been on the market?
How long is it? Who said that? You get a star.
Every year.
How long has it been on the market? Because that answer to that question is going to tell them basically how much they can negotiate on the home. And it is a fact. And Dean, here is your script for your seller who's overpriced their home. Everybody write this down. After 60 days on the market, I'm going to throw a lot of numbers here. So if you're not a math person, I'm going to really break it down slowly, okay? After 60 days on the market, a seller has a 30% chance, which is, this is a 100% chance, this is a 30% chance. It's a low chance. After 60 days on the market, the seller has a 30% chance of getting 95% of the original list price. So let's boil that down. So if you list a home for $400,000, Mrs. Seller, okay, and it's been on the market for 60 days, the chance of getting $380,000 for your home is now 30%. Well, I want to build in room for negotiation. Oh, that's great, because that's what you're going to get. Every day that your home is on the market means a less and less percentage chance of you getting a higher and higher percentage of the sale price to list price. Now that becomes magnified when you have a perceived external negative, because people create stories. We are giant judging, storytelling, story inventing machines. And so when someone asks, how long has it been on the market? And someone says 120 days, what's the next question they ask?
What's wrong with it?
What's wrong with it? Why has it been on the market for so long? And they're going to create a story around it. Now, by this time, there might have been a price reduction. And if the only thing they can see is the kid's bedroom is painted pink with purple polka dots, they might say, well, I guess the reason this hasn't sold is because these bedrooms are going to have to be repainted. But Bill, this is just paint. We can do that. Because that's not an external negative. That's something that can be changed. But what about backing up to Mason Road? Well, after 30 days, Mason Road is going to become 99, or the West Park Tow Road. After 65 or 70 days, it's going to turn into I-10. And that negative is going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger problem to overcome. And so if you don't price the home right in the beginning, okay, that negative is going to become, those power lines, I'm telling you, they're going to become 3,000-foot radio antennas in the mind of a buyer. And so if you don't price it right from the get-go, you are going to be fighting an uphill battle that even price reductions are not going to overcome. So you've got to look at perceived external negatives. Now there's also external positives. That's the good news. Now, what's going to move the slide up? It's going to be things that people are looking for a home that may even be rare. Okay? And if you get a combination of those factors, The sum of those factors is going to add more value to a home than each individual piece. For example, I would challenge you to go right now on a HAR and find a one-story home on a lot that's bigger than 12,000 square feet on a cul-de-sac with a 3-car detached garage with a swimming pool, an outdoor kitchen, and a covered back patio. Go find that.
Good luck.
Go find that at any price. Okay?
Very hard.
And if you find it, please call me. I'll let you represent me because that's exactly what I'm looking for right now. It's a unicorn, but do they come up? I mean, you might find some that are sold. Well, any one of those things is a desirable thing. One stories in general are more desirable. They're scarcer than 2 stories. Homes with pools vary right now. They're hot, right? Homes with pools, we can't find them. 3-car garage for a 1-story, it's very rare because the 1-story takes up so much of the lot. You can't put a 3-car garage. And same thing for a pool. A 1-story takes up so much room. Very often, if you put a pool in, it's a little lap pool. Anybody seen any of those?
Oh, yes.
So if you have all of these factors, you can just take that up there like that. Again, supply and demand is the most important aspect of selling a home. People say, what's the best month? And listen up here, because I'm going to bust a myth. What's the best month to sell a home? Have we missed the selling season? What's the best time to put your house on the market? Throw all that out the window. The best time to put a house on the market is when the supply and demand favors who, if you're the seller?
The seller.
Best time to buy a home is when the supply and demand favors the buyer. The best time to sell a home is when supply and demand favors the seller. I remember January 2013 when there were people lined up. A home would be listed in Green Trails, and it was unbelievable. In January and February, there were 50 cars in an open house. You couldn't get through the neighborhood. And there were people lined up in my neighborhood, Greenway Village, to see 1-story homes in January and February. And sellers were just making money hand over fist. So there's no season. It's supply and demand, and a good way to gauge that is with that months of inventory. So I wouldn't move the slide because you're listing a home in December. I wouldn't move it down. I would only move it down if the supply and demand favored the buyer. Then you want to adjust the range in the slide. Move it up if the supply and demand favors the seller. Move it down if the supply and demand favors the buyer. So back to the 1-story, there is there's no supply of that. So if one of those comes on the market, there's no telling what you could get for that. Okay? Now, be careful about positives, because one person's positive might not be another person's. You can't just go ahead and slap on another $30,000, $40,000 for a house on the golf course. Maybe you can, but being on a golf course is a negative for as many people as it is a positive, right, Dawn?
Yes, correct. You are correct.
You live on a golf course, right?
Yes.
So, and where you are on the golf course, right?
Where you are, yes.
Like if you are 2 yards off the tee box on the right hand
Par
side,
3, yes.
I want to be golfing on that golf course. I will put dents in your gutters. By the way, if you're showing a house on a golf course, look at the gutters. Look for as many little round holes in the gutters as you can.
Actually, funny enough, we've only had 3 windows break in 23 years, so not so bad.
That's great. So a positive could also be a negative. Don't just go jump on the thing that, and golf courses, I would say 20 years ago, they might have had even a stronger appeal than they do now. I don't know. That's just my own personal feeling. Backing to a green belt or a nature preserve. Beautiful backdrop. You got the woods, you got the forest. And a lot of people love that. They love the privacy, but some people think two things. They think what?
Snakes.
Critters.
Critters?
Snakes.
That's the C word. What's the F word?
Endangered species.
What?
Owls, and all that other stuff.
Flooding, right?
Snakes.
It back up.
Oh, okay.
So, and by the way, a pool. This is really a biggie, okay? Don't go crazy adding value because of a pool. Couple of rules of thumbs of pools, okay, and moving things up and down here. Okay, in general, if the house has a pool, you can move in this direction somewhat, but be careful. First of all, pools add a maximum value at a very small window of price. In my opinion, in the 300 to 600 window, that's where you'll see you get the most return on a pool. Why? Down in the lower price point, if you got a $50,000, $60,000 pool in a $200,000 neighborhood, people aren't going to spend $260,000 for that house, or maybe even 230. Because why? Because for 230, they can go to the next nicer neighborhood. They would rather be in the next nicer neighborhood than in the bad neighborhood with a pool. And again, every neighborhood is the American dream for somebody. I'm talking about from the perception of a buyer. On the other hand, up at the higher end, okay, if someone's got $1 million to spend on a home, and you have two homes side by side, and one has a 5-year-old pool and one has no pool but just got a beautiful setting to put a pool in, can the person with the no pool home get maybe almost as much as the person with the pool home? Yes, because in that price point, someone's going to come in with the money and build their dream pool. And if that other pool next door is even a little obsolete, or maybe it's not the biggest and greatest, most wow pool because the buyer was thinking budget and they didn't, you should spend, by the way, 18.5% of a property's value on a backyard living area, including a pool. Just keep that in mind. But if you under improve the pool on $1 million home, that pool could actually become a liability, and it can actually take away value from the home. So you got to be careful about things like pools because they can cut both ways.
18.5% based. Why did you come with the 18.5 from the value of the house?
Google it and just put in, what optimizes property value, and just think about it. If you spend, 40% of a property value on a backyard paradise, that's not going to add 40% value. If you put a pool in that's only maybe 10% or 5% of the property value, you got a $400,000 home, you put maybe a $20,000 or $25,000 pool in, that's going to be under improved. It's not, that's fine, but when you go to sell the home, that could take away the value of the home if it's under improved. Okay. All right, sitting down with the seller. What's the seller's motivation? How much are they going to want to do to get the house ready to put on the market? Again, if they're going to do some things and they're going to follow your advice and your suggestions, that's going to move the dial up. If they're saying, no, we just want to sell it and get rid of it, we're not going to do a thing, that's going to move the slide down. What's their timing? This is where, and they haven't been around lately because of COVID. They've kind of gone out of business. OfferPad, an open door, right? They were flying high because they catered to people that just wanted a quick sale. They wanted to get out of Dodge, and they didn't care how much money they made. There is nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand that by having a discussion with your seller. They might want to move it down here because they want to get out of Dodge and get this done. Do they have an urgency for some reason to sell the home? That's going to move the price down. We're still in the range. We're not giving the house away. We're still in the market range that would be considered a win-win price. But what do we do when we move the price down? We increase the pool of what?
Buyers.
Buyers, right. All right, I gave you the 60 days statistic. You want to make your home look like a deal compared to the others? Okay, crossing 50s and 100s. This is always a big discussion point. Let's say you're moving up the slide, and right about here, now between here and here, you're between 400 and 410. Well, you've got a judgment call to make. Are you going to end up at the end of the day, remember, you start your journey with the end in mind, are you going to end up with a better sales price if you list it just below 400 and capture that big pool of buyers that are only looking up to 400? Or are you going to gamble a little and go a little higher, lose those buyers, lose a lot of those buyers that are only looking up to 400, but you have a chance of getting a sales price now above 400. So when you're at that 100 and even at the 50 mark, you really have a discussion to have with your seller. And, you know, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It really, again, depends on motivation.
Chris, I have a question.
Yes.
Hey, so on that scenario you just described, it would probably be better to price it at 400 because then you have buyers that are looking, we'll just say 375 to 400, and those that are looking in the 400 to 425. So you capture on both sides of that.
Excellent
spectrum.
point. Yeah, that's excellent point. And by the way, the 399 millennials just think that's the most ridiculous thing on the face of the earth. You know.
I took your advice on a listing like that, and you were right. I went right below. Remember the listing I told you about, and I got offers from day 2.
Yeah.
So you were right.
Steve's point is good because, you know, what do people on their smart devices? They don't have 399 as a top limit. They have 400 as a top limit. So they're going to pick up anything listed at 400. But I was saying, you know, considering 405 or 410 or 409, you know, that's not going to be picked up if it's up to 400. You're going to miss those 400 and under buyers. One more thing I want to talk about, and you know, because this is also a listing discussion. Two points I want to make. One is, it's a universal fact, and you can use this when you sit down both with buyers and sellers. It's a universal fact. Every seller at the end of the day is going to wonder if they could have gotten more for their home. It's a fact of life. Every seller is going to wonder if they could have gotten more for their home. Every buyer is going to wonder what?
They can have less.
I pay too much for the house.
If they could have
gotten it cheaper.
If they could have gotten it for cheaper. And as I just said, you know, if you look at a 72-hour time frame from Friday to Monday, you know, things could just change right there. So here's the thing also, universal. Every seller would like to sell their home quickly and for top dollar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right? Everybody wants to sell their home quickly and for top dollar. What do all the top agents, I don't advertise this, but, you know, we'll sell your home quickly and for top dollar, right? Because they know that's important. But what does every seller who sells their home the first weekend think?
I gave it away.
They got what they wanted. They got what they dreamed of. They got what they heard all their neighbors did. All their neighbors sold it in 6 hours, and they want to do that. And then when it actually happens,
I would have waited another better offer.
they think, I priced it
Too
too
low.
low. So I really think that I would be doing you a disservice, even though, and I was shooting for 90 minutes, but, you know, I think we're down for 2 hours. And if you're still with me, thank you. But I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't discuss with you how to talk to your sellers about this one day on the market, sell the first weekend, possible multiple offer situation, and that you're not giving the house away. But we want to explain what happened in that scenario. and what happened to your neighbor. Your neighbor didn't underprice the home. They priced it well. May I explain? That's one thing I learned in Bold is I love the may I explain. You get permission from your seller to basically lay it on them, right? And so may I say, sure, tell me, explain. Well, you know, first of all, big picture. If you go 2 weekends without selling your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you can be pretty sure that the chances of you getting a full price contract are going to be very slim. You might still get full price on weekend 3 or weekend 4, but every weekend that goes by, there is going to be, in the eye of a buyer, more negotiating room. Now you might reduce the price and get 100% of the reduced price, but of the original price, every weekend that goes by, it's going to be harder. So we really do want to look at a price that's going to attract a lot of attention that first weekend. Let me explain who looks at your home the first weekend. The first weekend, everybody who looks at your home, no one is going to be someone who just woke up that morning and said, hey, let's go buy a house today. There might be 1 or 2. But if you have 20 people through your house that first weekend, you can believe that those 20 people have been out in the market and they've looked at everything else. And what they are doing is they're looking at the new home on the market. And you know, I like to do this with the guy sellers. I say, remember in high school when that new girl came to school, right? I mean, suddenly the hall she walked down was suddenly the way you went to your next class. Because everybody wants to check out the new girl in school. I'm sure all the women on this call all had guys following them, right? In the hallway, the new girl in school. And the best chance of that new girl getting a date, if that's what they're looking for, is probably the first weekend that she's new in the school. Because what happens to these houses after the first 2 weekends? Well, now the people who are going to be looking at their house are not the people who are only looking at the new homes. Now they are new buyers. They are people that have made a decision in the last 2 weeks to start looking at homes. And now they're looking at your home, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, along with the other 20 homes that are on the market in this area. And now they're comparing your home and its features and benefits and value to all the other homes in the neighborhood. So in a sense, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that first weekend, or maybe the first 2 weekends, you're the only game in town. You are what everybody's going to be focused on. And if you price the home right and sell it, it's not because you priced it too low. It's because the buyers that have been looking and looking and looking have finally, finally, this is what we've been looking for. It's priced well. It's in a great location. And by golly, there's a lot of people lined up to look at this house, or there was a lot of people at that open house. And we need to go back and write an offer. And that's the reason why people sell the home in the first weekend. It's not because it's underpriced. It's because it was priced right. And by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, wouldn't you agree that that buyer that we get in that environment, in that scenario, is probably going to be the most committed buyer that we might see the entire time? If we don't get that buyer, down the road, the buyers that we get, when they reduce the price, when they've negotiated, they're just going to feel like they can beat us up again on repairs a week later. But the buyer that we get that first weekend, who's missed out on other properties and multiple offers, who's looked at everything else, they're going to be the most motivated buyers to get this house, to stay in the deal and take it to the closing table. And at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, to get to the closing table, turn this property into cash, and get you on your way. Thank you. Those of you who stayed around, I will stay as long as there are questions, but I welcome any comments from any of the other seasoned agents who are on the call. And Thanks again.
Chris,
Awesome.
I have a question about move-in ready and just the move-in ready discussion you might have with your clients. So for example, if they have a lime green wall and a fluorescent orange wall and a blue wall, and perception is so much, right? And even though it may be, cosmetic, so many people that go to a home, they say, oh, it looks awful. I can't move into this home, and they can't get beyond the front door looks awful. The walls look awful, and they won't want to make an offer unless they're looking good.
Well, one of the conversations, I want everybody else to chime in here. One of the conversations I have with sellers is, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, the first showing is not when they walk through the door. The first showing is when they're at home and they're online and they're looking at the professional photography that I'm going to pay for to present your home in its best face. And some of the colors in this house, some of the things in this house are going to show up in these photographs. And people do make decisions on whether they're going to go take a look at a home very often based on what they're seeing in the pictures. Now, the pink bedroom upstairs isn't as big a concern to me as this purple dining room. And so most buyers are not going to want this purple dining room. If they come to see it, even after they've seen the purple dining room in the pictures, then that's going to be probably a project that would put this in the not move-in ready category. So I would strongly recommend considering painting this dining room.
Chris, I have a question. When you said you run the market for a neighborhood on the lowest sold and the highest sold, are you putting any category on, for example, based on 2 stories with pools? Do you even categorize it, or or just the highest and lowest period?
Yeah, one of the first things, again, I don't know if Osneid is still on the line, but Osneid has been getting a lot of listings on my team, and we've been doing a lot of market analysis, and I'm not familiar with some of the neighborhoods. And so just for starters, I just always go and look at, in the last 2 years, what's the most a home has ever sold for in this neighborhood and what's the least, without looking, at anything else. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's just a starting point for me. Just so I know the range, the big range of what this neighborhood will sell for.
So like try scope on what's the best and the worst that can happen.
Right. Well, if I know nothing about a neighborhood, that's just a good place for me to start. Is
okay.
Are we looking at a neighborhood where the homes are 200 to 300, or a neighborhood where the homes are 150 to 250? I just want to feel. I try to get a feel for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Pop up. Go, Monica.
Hey, Monica.
I have a question. Hi, Chris. Thank you for the information today. It was awesome.
Yeah, next week, same time, we'll look at the buyer's side, and
okay.
I'll be doing that from beachside. I probably will aim the camera at the ocean.
Oh, okay. Darn. Wish I could be there with you. Okay. Well, the question I have, it has to do with, you gave the 4 different analogies about move-in ready, not so move-in ready. Okay, I have
those are my categories. Yeah.
Yeah, but I like those categories because it helps to put it into perspective as to how to price the home. One of the things that I had done with the potential coming soon client is that I had asked him to fix the rotted wood on the outside of his home. I asked him to pressure wash the driveway. I asked him to repaint the door or do something to the front door to make it look better, shellac it or what have you. On the inside of the house, he had some really outdated appliances, so I told him it might help if he put in new appliances, which he says he's going to do. Now, kitchens and bathrooms sell houses. So one of the things that I'm wanting to ask this guy to do is to think about changing the countertops, not necessarily the cabinets, because the countertops are Formica and they have this pinstripe type of, it's not pinstripe, but it's like a striping countertop, but it's in the 1980s. Formica stuff. So I don't want him to spend a lot of money, but I at least want him to make it where it's move-in ready. And that could be a little bit of the last update that I would ask him to do. Do you think that would be reasonable? Because the price range is like 185.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned the price range at the end there. You've gotten some incredible training somewhere, because you mentioned wood rot, pressure washing, front door. They say that whatever you do to a front door, you get back in sales price. If you replace it, you're going to get that price back. That's just kind of old school of thought. Wood rot, the two things that give people a big visceral turnoff to a home are moisture issues, mildew issues. So very often you're taking care of those things with pressure washing. And if there's wood rot, I do recommend taking care of that. So that's not your question. You asked about the kitchen counters, but I wanted to tell you that what you just mentioned, those three things are three things that I think are very important. The other thing that I would always recommend somebody do, and not give an allowance for and not lower the price for, if carpet has to be replaced, if it has to be replaced, to do that for two reasons. One is a buyer is going to deduct more off the price for replacing the carpet than the carpet actually costs. And dirty carpet is something that, or stained, pet stained carpet, drink stained carpet is something that gives people a gut level, visceral turn off to the house. I've got stained carpet in my house. I'm just going to be completely transparent. It might even be a pet stain, okay? But, you know, we don't mind our own dirt.
Right.
Just like we don't mind the smell of our own, never mind, I won't go there.
I got,
You know, but other people's dirt and other people's, you know, get away from me, right?
right. Yeah.
It gives people a visceral turnoff. I am so glad you mentioned the 185 price point. Because Monica, you know, it's been my experience right now that homes under 200,000 are just flying off the, you know, off the market. And if that price point is, I would say, at the middle of your neighborhood, and you look at how fast homes are selling, then I would say there's a possibility that, you know, changing the Formica to granite, you know, isn't going to make that big of a difference in that price point.
Okay. That's kind of what I was thinking.
What about the competition? What about other homes that are selling or that you're going to be competing against? Do you think that the countertop question is going to come into play? Because, you know, I just sold a house with Formica counters that was kind of in that lower price range, and it just went. I mean,
Honestly, I don't think it's gonna matter. I haven't been over there to see what he's done since I gave him this list of things to do. So I'm gonna be talking with him this weekend. But he did put stainless steel appliances in the house. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna be a good or bad thing, because I actually recommended that, but then I got to thinking about it later, and I was like, we don't want to overprice the house with upgrades because it's a neighborhood that's a modest neighborhood.
over improved, yeah.
Yeah, over improved. So I'm thinking that what you said about the carpet, because I was kind of sitting on the fence about that carpet, and I personally want to see what the carpet looks like when I go back. I wasn't a big fan of the carpet because of the colors, but I will take a note to whether it's, like you said, dirty or whatever.
No, I'm not talking about old serviceable carpet. I'm talking about carpet that's
I know.
gross.
Filthy, yes, I know.
Gross. That a buyer is going to say, "Oh, I'm going to have to change that."
Yeah.
If the counters have an issue, like they're dented up or dinged up, or, you know, there's a big scratch or a gouge, you might consider doing something inexpensive.
Okay.
No. Again, how hot is the neighborhood? If the neighborhood's hot, probably don't need to do that. That's my opinion.
Okay. Okay, good. I just wanted to know, because when I go back over there, I'm going to be looking at those 4 levels of move, what you described about the conditions and
Yeah.
stuff. So 'cause the neighborhood's not bad. It's just going to be condition of the house. So location is good. So we're just talking condition at this point. But you have definitely helped me out here. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Congratulations on the listing.
Yay!
I think you have many more in your future just from this little interaction we've had here.
Well, I have to give some of that credit to Christian Mann because I was sitting in her class before we had to deal with COVID-19. And she showed a picture on the screen when we were in class one time. And she said, which door do you think is going to show this house well? Which door offers more curb appeal? So that just stood out to me when I went to go look at his house.
That's right.
Kristen's a great trainer. We got just some incredible trainers in our office.
So I can't take all the credit. She's the one that said the power washing and all that stuff.
It makes a difference for sure.
Before we shut it down, I want to thank Karen. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome, Chris. Thank you. I have so much
We don't
fun.
have to do this, but you know, we all love you, and it's great to have one person just kind of give me a little chuckle here, or an
You
amen
betcha.
there, or feedback.
You gave us some phenomenal stats
Yeah.
and facts, and we can take it from there and use everything you gave us. Thank you so much.
All right, well, I
Thank you,
hope to
Chris.
see
Good
everybody
job.
next Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Yes. 1 o'clock next week. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, great job, Chris. Thanks.
You're welcome.